This week on the Orange Box podcast, we talk about the Switch getting a final direct on March 27th, Sakurai's take on Japanese game development, the rumored three-phase launch strategy for Switch 2, and more. All of this tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, episode 77. I am your host, the man who is having Dark Souls 2 deja vu, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me, as always, the man who is the sole focus of tomorrow's final Switch Direct, Justin, better known as I am Zaracon. How you doing today? How's your week been?
It's been overall I'd say a very good week. So last week, my mom, my niece, and my nephew had their birthday. So for my mom, what I was planning on doing was I decided to make her a dinner. So I made some garlic potato breasts, roasted garlic potato breasts with some pesto and some toasted panko seasoning on top of it. I made some garlic mashed potatoes since I knew she would love that, and I asked her if she would want to have either some broccoli or some type of carrots for on the side. She said broccoli, so I made some garlicky cheddar broccoli to add that. So did that, and then additionally I made her some ice cream, which is something that I haven't done in a while. So I prepped that up on Thursday night, since that's sort of an all night or all day endeavor, just to get everything together with that. So did that, kind of messed things up with some of the toppings just because I need to stir it around some more, but overall that turned out pretty well. So had some good dinner, had some ice cream with her, definitely was a good time there. Saturday, my niece and nephew had their birthday party. I went to their house earlier just to spend time with them. Then later on, we went to their party. They went to a play place, so went there. They had me climb up in the tubes with them, which some of the tubes I was like, I think I can fit through here. Other times I was like, I'm not that flexible, so I'll see you around the other side. But it definitely was a good time during all that. I mentioned, I sent this to you in Discord, but I got my component splitter, and when I tried using it, it wasn't working at all. So later on, I decided just to go ahead, try to buy another one. In fact, I saw actually someone was selling a 3-pack of splitters. I said, I really only need one, but in case one of them doesn't work, I'll at least have 2 more I can work with. So I bought that. It came in a bit later than I would have liked, but it arrived today. I haven't fully tested it out yet, but as far as what I could tell, the one I tried works. So that should hopefully work with recording now, and I shouldn't have any more problems with that moving forward. But that's taken care of. And then, in case you probably couldn't tell, I've got a little bit of a cold in me right now. I'm hoping I can knock it off soon. But I do at least feel better than I was earlier when I had it. So there's that at least. But yeah, that's everything with me.
Good stuff. Yeah, glad that everything went well with the birthdays. Although you said you said garlic potato breast.
Oh.
I assumed you meant chicken breast, but
yeah, I meant chicken.
Garlic potato breast. That might be the title of this episode. We'll see. Obviously, as you know, I did my Extra Life stream on Friday, starting Friday morning, going through Saturday morning. I did some test streams beforehand, for anyone, really, I'm saying this more for listeners than anything else, but I did a couple test streams. First, I did it just through YouTube. Then I tried Rumble Studio, which worked great partially. It worked great in that I could stream to both Rumble and Twitch at the same time, and there was no difficulty from that standpoint, but I couldn't get it to go through to YouTube. So I ended up just doing YouTube for the full stream, which was a disappointment because, like, Rumble Studio was really nifty from that perspective, but it was just, I thought YouTube was the most important one to get because that's where my main audience is, even though I didn't get a whole lot of people watching because they're not subscribed to me for that, but still, it was just, it is what it is. So yeah, the stream went reasonably well. Definitely struggled those last couple hours until I got into like the really exciting part of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and then that helped me get through the last like hour and a half that I was struggling the most. One of the things that did happen, I got a new microphone arm for my mic, so it's like as a really heavy duty one. It was more pricey, but it's been well worth it. I mean, it's just way sturdier because my other one was like bending and falling apart, and it just wasn't working the greatest. And so switching over to this microphone arm has been really nice, and it has like a thing that basically lets you run the cable through the arm so that it keeps it from having to be wrapped around or dangled or whatever. So it's pretty nifty. It's basically just like you add like these rubber clip things onto the XLR cable, and then it runs, and then that enables it so that it can stay in the groove on the arm. So yeah, it was an expensive purchase, but I think it was an investment well worth it. And the one that I had previously gotten, I think I've had it for a couple years now, and it was just, it was like a $30-$40 arm, and it was falling apart. It was literally bending forward because of the weight of the microphone and everything. So it wasn't really a good long-term thing. It basically just got to a point where it wasn't going to be usable. So, otherwise, see here. One thing that was nice that we ended up deciding to do, and I think is going to be a new tradition, is Saturday, after, when I got up, of course, because I only slept like probably 4.5, maybe 5 hours after I went to bed after the stream, just because of the fact that I wanted to make sure I could get to bed at a normal time on Saturday night. We decided to go out for Chinese food after, and it's great because I didn't have to cook anything, and it was like it was a buffet, so we had lots of variety. It was all, the kids could get the stuff that they wanted, I could get the stuff I wanted, and it was just like, it was really nice to just like have a super easy meal and not have to think about it and not have to make a mess in the kitchen, and it's great. So I think that's going to be our new tradition after the 24-hour streams, is the evening of, we'll probably go out and save some difficulties from that standpoint. Otherwise, I'm trying to think if there's anything else really going on. I led music on Sunday and doing it again this coming Sunday. My in-laws are coming in. They're arriving sometime Friday. And I'm working from home that day because I've changed my office days to Wednesday and Thursday instead of Thursday, Friday. Mostly because of the puppy, because the kids have co-op, homeschool co-op on Fridays. So they and my wife are usually gone for several hours, and she definitely would have a hard time being by herself, and we don't really want to have to be in a kennel for several hours. So, so we just decided that it was easier for me to be at home on Fridays, and so that's what I'm doing. But it also works out this time because of the fact that my in-laws are arriving on Friday. So, I think that's about it. There's probably something I'm forgetting about, but that's all the major stuff I can think of.
Sounds good. It also seems like just looking at the way you were moving around, it seems like is it easier to move
Oh yeah,
your mic stand around, because it looks like it's very easy.
way easier. One of the nice things is that like if I want to raise it, I mean like for one, I don't have to keep adjusting like the knobs and stuff. It does a really good job just maintain stability and everything, and I can just like lift it up very easily to get it out of the way. I don't rotate it as much as I did with the other one because the other one I rotated more because of the fact that it was harder to adjust. This one I can just push right up and then it's out of the way, which is really convenient. Yeah.
Very nice.
All right. So go ahead and give it to me. What have you been playing this week?
Excuse me. So I'm just going to knock these first two out of the way. I play a little bit of Wall World, no footage there. Um, really just trying to see if I could beat the DLC. Still struggling with that, but making progress here and there a bit just by getting some new blueprints and stuff there. I played a new game called A Game About Digging a Hole, and this was something I decided to pick up just because I was so frustrated with my splitter not working last week that I was just like, I really need a game where I don't have to think too much about anything, and I just wanted a game just to turn my brain off completely. So this game essentially is just you digging a hole, trying to find some treasure. You buy a house, and there's some treasure there in the backyard, and you're trying to like dig a hole deep enough to find it. Eventually, you're able to get stuff like dynamites and all other types of contraptions to make the hole bigger, especially as you dig further in there. Um, Sadly, there are no cloud saves because I originally played the game on my excuse me. Originally I played it on my Steam Deck, which runs nearly at a locked 60 FPS. There are a couple dips here and there, but I just was just playing it there. And then when I went to record it on my PC, I realized there's no save data located here. So then I realized, oh wait, there's no cloud saves available. So kind of sucked on that end, having to start over from the beginning. Um, all in all, it's pretty basic. I mean, I think the Steam page makes it seem like there's a whole lot more to do. Maybe you get to that point, but just right now, it's just a bit tedious. There's not really too much to say about it on that end, so it's more or less just a digging simulator. Although one thing I thought was pretty interesting, this might not have been the intended design, or the thought process might not have been there, but just like the concept of buying a house to find the treasure reminded me of Jesus's parable about the treasure in the field and how a man bought the field so he could find the treasure there. I just thought from that end, I thought that was pretty cool, but that probably wasn't what the dev had in mind when he made the game. But yeah. Now, as far as the games I actually put more time into, I played some more Core Keeper with the friend I had before, but then also with someone else. We expanded our base a little bit more. We got some new abilities, and also we had some new pets that will help us with exploration, and also fighting enemies in general. The one thing which we weren't prepared for, though, was the more people that are in a server, the more difficult the server is. So enemies are a lot stronger, they attack more frequently, and because we didn't have enough gear at the time, or at least our gear wasn't adequate enough, it wiped us out quite a bit several different times. Me in particular, though, since I was doing the most exploration. But eventually, we were able to find better items and better gear, and it made things a whole lot easier. And I think we also are able to get certain things crafted, which is cool, and we're trying to like also find some more NPCs to come to our base so we can either buy items or get certain things from them. We've seen the next boss to face, however, we're not ready for that thing. I mean, the thing is just like a giant slug creature that is just roaming around, and at first I thought huh, that's where where's this slime trail coming from? And then I just see this huge thing running right past me. I'm like, all right, I guess it's time to go back now. That's enough adventure for one day. But maybe next time we'll try fighting that thing. But at least for right now, it's not necessarily aggressive. It's just get out of the way and don't let it run you over. But yeah, so there's that. Went back, played some more Final Fantasy VII Remake, and I got through a good portion of Wall Markets. Been running around here and there, and I went into the tournament. And for the most part, the tournament was pretty well until I got to the Hell House, and that gave me much more trouble than I anticipated. It took me 2 attempts to actually beat. The first time it killed me, and I was so close to being it too, but I just was not able to heal in time, and it wiped Aerith and I out immediately.
Yeah.
But second time was a whole lot easier since I was able to figure out actually, or at least I knew going in, what I needed to do ahead of time. But it definitely was a bit tricky. So it's interesting. It was interesting having to go around the different areas trying to find stuff. And although I did get lost several times trying to figure out, hey, where am I supposed to go here? Where am I supposed to go there? Because you actually do have to go and talk to the different trio members in order to get approval to go see Don Corneo. And the trio member, well, I can't say for the third one, but at least for Madam M and Sam, they're definitely eccentric to a degree.
Yeah.
I haven't been able to see the third member yet. I mean, I've seen him, of course. He's right there with them watching the tournament, but I haven't met him yet. But it's interesting so far. Right now, I'm right at the parts where Aerith is about to go and get her makeover. I wanted to see if there's anything else that I'm missing yet, since you're supposed to they're still turning back after that point, so I want to make sure I got everything that I could do ahead of time. I went and I also fought the giant chocobo, the fat chocobo summon. That took me a couple attempts, but got that down after a while. But yeah, that's everything I have on that end. And then lastly, I tried Crysis Remastered. Now, I never played Crysis before when it originally came out, and I actually saw this was on sale during the Steam spring sale. I bought the trilogy, and it's definitely interesting the way it's designed, just because you have a super soldier suit, yet it doesn't make you, I guess, invulnerable to a degree, you might say. Now, granted, I'm playing it on Delta difficulty because I heard that even though it's more difficult because it's easier for you to die, it's also easier to kill enemies that way, especially if you use like headshots and stuff. So it's kind of balanced out in that regard. But yeah, so it's definitely interesting the way the game works, because you do have, a cloaking device, but you also have super armor that, takes the damage you would normally take. So it's interesting in that degree, but also you do have to be mindful about how you use your suit's abilities in combat, and also depends on how you want to engage in combat as well. Because initially what I was trying to do was try to stealth kill everything to a degree, try to be invisible, take enemies out one by one. But unfortunately, stealth never was my forte, so I ended up essentially getting into firefights more often than not, and then just trying to brute force my way through scenarios, and trying just to adjust to everything has been interesting. I played some of it on the Steam Deck, and I might have to adjust a few things, but it can pretty much run at 60 FPS, with, I think, most things set to medium. Of course, motion blur turned off, and no ray tracing, obviously.
Of course.
But it does run pretty well on the Steam Deck, and of course on desktop it runs pretty well. Unfortunately, similar to a game about digging a hole, there is no cloud support, which is very interesting. And apparently the original Crysis didn't have cloud support either, but when they remastered the game, they never thought to implement that. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, if you play it on your Steam Deck, you have to either just manually transfer the saves over, or you'll just have to start from scratch on like desktop, which is a shame. Uh, Now, actually, one last thing I want to mention, going back to Final Fantasy VII, is I was curious about seeing maybe if I could, what would happen if I raised the frame rate limit for the game, since I was playing it at 90 FPS.
Hmm.
I decided, let me try running it at 120 FPS. And for the most part, it does work, but there's a little bit of stuttering and it drops down to 100,
Hmm.
maybe a little bit lower, but it can do 120 reasonably well.
Yeah.
But I think I might just stick with 90 FPS just because it's pretty much hard locked at that point, and there's no
Right.
dipping at all. So I like that experiment for what it was. But yeah, that's everything I have.
Good stuff. All right. So I have first of all a question about the game about digging a hole. So my main thing is there any particular reason you didn't try just recording with the Steam Deck's recording feature?
That that's a good question. I didn't. I think initially it was the reason I didn't do it was because I had I was recording all of the games essentially at once during
Ah.
one night, and so since I had Crisis, and of course Final Fantasy 7 and Core Keeper already downloaded, and I was already recording those, I
Hmm.
said I'll just go ahead, install the game on my PC, and record from there. That way I can do it all at once.
Gotcha.
If I thought about it, I probably would have gone ahead and recorded it on my Steam Deck, but I just wasn't thinking about it at the time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I definitely suggest whenever you're like playing a game on your Steam Deck and of course, that you're going to have footage that you want to submit, just record right then and there because it's
Mm.
super easy. And then you have to go into desktop mode to export uh, video files longer than a minute. But then it's like super easy and you can do any trimming you need to do from there and saves you some effort. So, good stuff. Yep. All right. So I have a big long list of games, mostly because of Extra Life. I am not going to dive deep into all of them. I'm basically just going to list them all out, and then I'll cover a few of them. So all the games I played in Extra Life, some of these are games I played before that as well, and some I also played after. But the games I played, and I will have at least brief clips here. First of all, I played some Chrono Trigger, which I had restarted, I think Thursday last week. Yeah, it was Thursday because it was after we recorded the podcast. So um, I restarted Chrono Trigger and was playing that for a bit. I just basically got through. I finished up the first time you go to 2300 AD. So I finished up getting the getting through the factory and um, after Robo's out of commission briefly, and then you go through the portal and you end up at the end of time. So that's as far as I got in the game so far. I haven't really played it since then. Um, then I also played some Returnal, which I think I forgot to include on here. Oh, there it is. Yes, I played some Returnal. As you saw on stream, I made it to the first biome boss, and unfortunately, even though I got pretty far through it. I did not beat it, and then when I came back, uh, of course, with it being the roguelite kind of thing, I basically had to restart the whole biome, minus the permanent upgrades that I already had. So I didn't really play beyond that. Um, I played a bit of Outer Wilds, basically just once again trying for that achievement, and I did not succeed. Um, I still have basically the muscle memory, but it's just that one is really difficult. I was getting in like the high 100 FPS range at 1440p, so that was pretty nifty. Let's see here. So I'm just trying to go through my list here to do. I decided to play some more of Neo, which I hadn't played in quite a while. And the first thing that comes up in that fight is, I mean, the first, the one open mission I had before going to the next area is like this boss fight against Tachibana Munishige. And oh my goodness, this guy's a pain in my butt. I hate him so much. He's so hard. And like I think there was one or two times that I got pretty close on beating him, but every time after that it's just this guy hits hard and fast. And I saw some, I mean it's an optional mission, so it's not something that's required. But it's hard for me to like just ignore it, so I haven't gone to the next area yet. But what I may end up doing, particularly because I know I've seen that a lot of people have difficulty with this guy, is doing what someone else did and just waiting until I'm like way over leveled and then go and just completely decimate him is what I think I'm probably gonna end up doing, because I'm getting so tired of it. The really annoying thing about this fight is like there are ways to do a lot of damage all at once, but for one, even if I try going into the fight with a full like spirit summon, whatever you call it, it does not keep it full. So when I actually go into the fight, it's not full anymore, which means I can't use it in the fight. And it doesn't seem like it charges up at all, no matter how much I hit him, which is really annoying. So I can't, cheese him from that standpoint and do a lot of damage all quickly. So I thought, okay, well, I'll try using my handgun my hand cannon or my rifle or even my arrows, because those do a lot of damage at once as long as I can hit him. And like I'd be able to get his health down about halfway, and I'd keep working on trying to get him down, and then he'd end up killing me. And the thing is that my ammo doesn't replenish, so if I fail, then I lose all that ammo that I got. And you can leave the mission, but then I just end up having to keep trying to do the same thing, and it becomes really annoying. And yeah, so I hate this guy, and I have not beaten him yet. Of course, initially when I jumped in, I was like super rusty on the controls anyway, so I kept making a lot of mistakes, and tried going into like one of the other previous side missions just to kind of refamiliarize myself with the controls. By the time that I came back to this and played it some more on the Steam Deck, I was definitely, I had gotten myself familiar enough with the controls to where I wasn't struggling from that standpoint. I was just struggling because this is a really hard fight. So, and that does remind me, I never did mention the stuff that happened with my Steam Deck, but I'll get to that later. So, next thing on my list was I did play some Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Switch, which I played primarily. Primarily, I played that during Extra Life, and I played that on on my monitor and everything. But I did end up playing some yesterday on the Switch in handheld mode itself. I can definitely say that going to that game at 30 frames per second after playing a bunch of games that were over 100, or even in the 70, 80, 90 range, man, it was painful. But also, visually, while the game doesn't look bad by any stretch, it is not well suited to playing on a high resolution monitor. It is a much more pleasant experience playing on the Switch itself. So I think that at least until the potential switch to 60 frames per second mode becomes available, I will only be playing it on the Switch itself when I play it. And I guess I forgot to put that one as one of the stories we could talk about, but we can kind of just mention that briefly whenever we get to talk about the Switch 2 later. So, but yeah, anyway, I mean, the gameplay is still great. The initial custom control layout, it would have worked well if it wasn't for the fact that there's a lot more functionality to the various buttons in this game compared to the first Xenoblade. So ultimately, I ended up just keep putting it back to the default controls, and I just deal with it. It's a little annoying having to go back and forth with the D-pad for the different arts instead of being able to do it with shoulder buttons. But realistically, it was just because the shoulder buttons have a lot more functionality than they did in the first Xenoblade game. It was just more difficult than it was just there were too many situations where it was throwing me off, and where having to use the D-pad in place of the shoulder buttons and vice versa was just not working. So, but anyway, game itself is still solid. The music is amazing. I plan to keep playing this one. I just when I play it, it's basically going to be in handheld mode, and I'm hoping the Switch 2 will in fact have improvements to make it worthwhile to play on a larger screen and hopefully a much better frame rate, because that 30 frames is kind of rough. I do want to mention also with it, much like the original version, the pop-in is still really, really bad. I mean, because you'll be running up to something and then something will literally just appear right in front of you, like a skull that's in the environment, or a car, or something else. I think pretty much enemies are the only thing that doesn't do that quite as much, but like anything that's a non, like any other type of object can just appear right in front of you as you're walking or running along. So yeah. But then I also played some games with my kids. So mostly it was Minecraft. I played that with all three of my kids one at a time. It was kind of fun. My oldest decided to build a minecart coaster, and so the gameplay that's playing here is him, primarily him building the track for the minecart, and me just kind of sitting there waiting for him to be done with that, and then individually we rode on the track, and it was pretty fun. But I can definitely say, having played more Minecraft, this is not a game I will ever get into. I think that, like, initially it seemed like, okay, I could see how this could be fun, but then the more I played, the more I was just like, this isn't for me. So, but that's fine, because I didn't get it for me. I got it for the kids, and they can enjoy it, and I will enjoy playing other games. But then we also me and the three kids together all played some Cruisin' Blast, which was actually a lot of fun. I bought this game. It was not long after it originally came out on the Switch, and I played a little bit on my own, but I played a bit with my kids during the stream, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a great very arcadey racing game, and it was a blast in every sense of the word, and it's kind of fun. There's additional cars, additional vehicles you can unlock. You can unlock unicorns. So we did on that, and so the kids, like two or three of them at a time, would be riding unicorns, and it's handling like a car and stuff, and using speed boosts and all this other stuff. And you can unlock like a hammerhead shark, which we didn't have enough of what we needed to unlock that yet. But yeah, Cruisin' Blast is a lot of fun. It's definitely one that I highly recommend playing. Let's see here. Just making sure I'm not forgetting any other games. I played some Diablo 4 with my wife. I was having issues with getting the Steam Deck to display properly on the screen, like through the capture card. It was just having some issues. I did eventually figure it out. It was just after the stream, figure out how to get that functioning. But as a result, we only have my gameplay displayed here. And, but yeah, that was a good time. We played that while listening to Fiddler on the Roof, which we only did the first half of the movie because it's, 3.5 hour movie, and my wife was getting tired, so we played for a bit, but still good stuff. Very slowly making our way through it. I want to say we're in Act 3 right now. I can't remember how many acts there are in the game, but we're somewhere around there. So, good stuff. Always good to be able to play games with her like that. And then after she went to bed, I went ahead. I jumped back into Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second here. I have too many different things here. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This gameplay that's being shown is actually from the end of my 24-hour stream because I played it again towards the end. But I think I am like either just finished or chapter 9, I want to say. And man, those last couple fights that I did were just like that was what I needed to wake me up. It's really good stuff. The one thing I will say about this game is I know it was really just because my computer had been on for so much time, and eventually I just needed to give it a break from rendering or from having to use the GPU so heavily. But like when I was playing it, typically I was getting, even with streaming 1440p, and I mean rendering at 1440p and streaming at the same time, I was getting around 70 to 90 frames per second, pretty average. But then like part way into the streaming in the evening before actually I guess it was really early morning, the frame rate was dropping down to like the high 30s, and it's like, okay, I think my computer needs a break because it's having some issues with running this game right now, and I know it's just because my computer's been on for like 18 hours, and I mean, like I think I restarted it once or twice, but just it was my computer was being utilized heavily, and so it just was having some issues. So I had stopped playing that for a bit and then switched over to Xenoblade for a while so that my computer could have a break. But while I was in between other games, I went ahead and booted up Shin Megami Tensei 5 Vengeance, and I got past the boss that I had been stuck on a while back. I mean, I looked at it, I think the last time I had played was back in October. It was like shortly after I did stack up, and I had gotten stuck on a boss, and then I came back to it and ended up playing that. Thankfully, this one was much less demanding on my computer because I could run it at 200 plus frames per second pretty consistently, even while streaming it, and still a great game. Played this for a bit before I was just getting kind of struggling to stay awake more, and yeah, good stuff. But then like I said, I booted Final Fantasy VII Rebirth back up and got to the point where I already mentioned. But then there's a couple other games I played separately from Extra Life. So one of those is one that I bought a while back on a sale, and I hadn't tried out yet. I've heard good things about it. I didn't play a ton. I basically just played the prologue, so I didn't get a full experience of it. And that game is Outriders. So I played this only on the Steam Deck so far. And like I said, I just played the prologue. I was getting pretty consistent 60 frames per second, but there's definitely potential times where it would drop more, and of course I haven't played far enough to actually get any powers, or rather I played like just to right after the prologue when you get like your first power, and I didn't have time to play any further than that. This was a few days ago. I haven't really been super motivated to jump back in. I'm sure that when I start actually having the opportunity to mess around with the powers, I will probably like it more. But honestly, it was not grabbing me. I basically just kind of forced myself to go through the prologue. Of course, I haven't tried this at all on my desktop. I know it'll obviously run much better there, but I mean, at least the initial stuff was, closer to 60. From what I've heard, it definitely has more issues when you have more stuff going on screen, but I just didn't play that much, so I don't really have a whole lot to say about that otherwise. But that's where we get to where I had I mean, it's not a game that I played the most necessarily because of how much time I spent playing games during Extra Life. But I guess I should back up a little bit. So on Thursday, I was trying to get set up to test out doing the dual screen streaming, with doing a Diablo 4 for myself and my wife. One on the Steam Deck, the other one on the PC. And the signal was not coming through correctly through the capture card. It was just like a green screen, green flash and stuff, and it was just, I couldn't figure out what was going on with it. I was looking it up, I wasn't really finding anything that was helpful, and so I tried just restarting my Steam Deck and was having some issues. And then I started getting to a point where my Steam Deck would not boot up. It was just like, it was getting, it would like get to, at most, to the Steam like logo screen, but it wouldn't move past that. And sometimes it takes a little bit longer to boot up, but this was just like, I was leaving it for like half an hour, it wasn't doing anything. And so I tried things like rolling back to an earlier version of the OS, before, because I was on the beta program and everything, seeing if maybe that worked. I tried just a variety of different things. Nothing was working. I tried leaving it overnight after attempting to reset the BIOS and all this other stuff, and just absolutely nothing was working. And I knew that factory reset would probably fix the problem, but it would also mean that I would lose my Dark Souls 2 save. So 50 plus hours of gameplay would be completely lost. And so it was just kind of like, that was to be a last-ditch, desperate resort. But ultimately, because I could not get my Steam Deck to start with all that effort, all those different things I tried, I just did it. I did a factory reset. I went back to the stable operating system, or stable version of SteamOS, and lost my Dark Souls 2 save. So I kind of went back and forth on it for a bit. I ultimately just decided, I think it would have been Sunday or Monday. I just decided, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to restart Dark Souls 2. So I did. And I will say, for one, I'm definitely getting through it way faster. When I checked before my lunch today, I had a total of about 5.5 hours. I was level 56 and had gotten through the first 5 bosses. 5 or 6? I can't remember. I've gotten through the first 5 bosses in about 5.5 hours, which I don't know exactly how many hours it took me last time, but I definitely was way more efficient with my time usage than the first time I went through these bosses. So, the other thing is I also didn't waste nearly as many souls because I knew where I was going. I knew how to deal with a variety of different enemies. I still died here and there, but like I got through the No Man's Wharf without dying. I got through the entire thing without dying at all because I knew where to avoid falling off the edge. Where the enemy what the enemy placement was, things like that, and so yeah, I just the bosses I've beaten in the game so far. I beat the last giant, the pursuer, and actually something funny about the pursuer. So I went ahead and I planned on I'm just gonna do the cheese strategy because it's fun. So I successfully parry him. I run over to the ballista. I fire it at him. Does a ton of damage, and then I cock it to fire it again, but I forget to actually press the button quickly enough for it to actually get the second shot off before he gets over to me. So I ended up failing on getting the second shot, and then I just beat him legit the rest of the way. It still only took me about, I think, 45 seconds, 47 seconds, something like that total for that victory. And I did actually die to him the first time because I messed up. But yeah, so it was still pretty easy. I definitely died more to the non-boss pursuers than I did to this one. And most of the times that I died to the non-boss pursuers, it was not because the pursuer itself was the problem. It was because there was a bunch of other enemies firing at me at the same time that were harder to get rid of before he showed up. And so that was just annoying. But anyway, went on to the Dragon Rider, and I decided, oh, I'm going to try out the cheese strategy because it'll be fun, since I didn't do that the first time. Unfortunately, I couldn't. I mean, so I didn't raise the rings on his arena, but he didn't run off the edge, and so I ended up just having to fight him legit. I still beat him on my first try without really any difficulty. But yeah, and then went into the fight against the old Dragon Slayer, aka Ornstein, and it took me a couple tries. It was funny though, the first time, well, maybe not so much funny, more like sad funny. The first time I fought him, I got him down to like a sliver of health, and then he killed me. And the second time I beat him without nearly as much difficulty, but yeah, it was just like, that reminds me, something that I learned. So remember how I told you about the Champions Covenant, which is the only one where you can get the enemies to continuously respawn? It not only does that, it also makes it so that you take more damage and the enemies take less damage.
Oh.
Or rather, you deal less damage and the enemies deal more damage. And I did not realize that. And I had been in that covenant most of the game when I was playing originally. So yeah, like I just learned that today because I was looking into. Oh yeah, I was looking into getting one of the pieces of armor that I had gotten originally when playing that I don't have on this playthrough. But yeah, and then let's see here. Do I have any more footage here? Oh yeah, and then I fought the Flexel Sentry in No Man's Wharf, and I think that took me 2 tries probably. But I still, played with NPCs helping me out just because it's like, I'm just trying to get caught back up where I was before. I did also fight the Ruined Sentinels, but I don't have the footage in here. I may or may not transfer it over from my Steam Deck because I did that during my lunch break today. And I had definitely a lot more difficulty with them this time than I did the first time. But they still weren't hard per se. I just made some dumb mistakes mostly. So. But yeah, I think that is basically everything. Apart from my Steam Deck issues, like I already said, there's not really anything else to report, and I tried to keep things as concise as possible compared to my usual rambling on about the games I've been playing.
Okay. So yeah, it definitely is a shame about what happened with your Steam Deck, and I hope that nothing like that ever happens again. But how close are you to catching up in Dark Souls 2 from when you last played originally?
Well, Dark Souls, originally I was 10 bosses in. So I've gotten 6 of them done, and I have probably about 7 hours of gameplay.
Okay, so that's
it
shouldn't
shouldn't be too hard. And I mean, leveling up is so much easier in this game than it is in the other ones. I find in general, like the fact that I was at level like 90 in my other game, and I'd only beaten 10 bosses was pretty ridiculous. And right now I think I'm at like high 50s, somewhere around there. I think I may even be as high as level 60 right now. I can't remember exactly. But yeah. And I will say I have made sure that I am backing up my save. So I am uploading it to my Google Drive after every major session that I put in. I'm just uploading it to my Google Drive, and that way I have it. I don't have to worry about losing my progress again. And even if I lose progress, it won't be nearly as much. And most likely, I'm not going to have this issue with my Steam Deck again. The fact of the matter is, as much as it pains me to recognize it, I probably never had to do any of the stuff I did that made my Steam Deck have the problems it did. Because the issues were not even with the Steam Deck why it wasn't coming through to the capture card. It was entirely something separate. But it's like, it is what it is. I can't do anything about it. That's the only thing that I really lost that was a disappointment. I guess I lost my save progress in Devil May Cry, but I wasn't far into 3. I was still pretty early on in the game. I'd only done like 2 or 3 missions, and 1 and 2, I had already beaten. So otherwise, it's like, I don't think there's really anything that I lost all that much of. I guess I also sort of lost my save for Prototype, because that's another one that doesn't have cloud saves. But that one, I don't think I had played very much on the Steam Deck. I played more on my desktop, and then I transferred my save from my desktop, but it's still on my desktop, so I can just get my save back from there, and that'll be fine. But I did end up cleaning up my Steam Deck quite a bit because of that, so I don't have nearly as much stuff as I had on it before. It's very bare bones right now in terms of all the stuff. I basically just downloaded a handful of games, some of which I haven't played yet, like the Castlevania Dominus collection and Prey I have installed, and SteamWorld Quest was one of the GOG games I also installed. And there may have been, the Yu-Gi-Oh game, the whatever it's called. It's the same one that's on the Switch that I have on Steam now too. But I haven't really played. I haven't played anything other than what I already said. So basically, the only thing I played on the Steam Deck since I did all that was Neo, Dark Souls 2, and Outriders. So yeah.
Okay, cool. And then going back some, I until you actually played this during your live stream, I had never heard of Cruise and Blast before, and I was very curious about it too because I was thinking, let me look this up. And apparently, I didn't know that this was a long-running series.
Oh yeah.
So have you played the previous games before?
I had not ever. I think I might have maybe played a little bit of Cruisin' USA on the N64, but like very, very little. In fact, it's possible that it's more like I had the game at one point, but I never actually played it. I honestly don't remember. I think I might have actually played it once in an arcade. That's probably what it was.
No way.
But yeah, this is the first one. It's just more like it came into the Switch. An arcadey racing game sounded fun, and I had heard good things about it, and I bought it on a whim and ended up really enjoying it. I just don't play this kind of game all that often.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting to learn about something new that I had never heard about before. So, and like you said, it definitely looked fun. So that's definitely good. And now I even learned that there actually was an arcade version released. So yeah, it definitely sounds good. And one last question I have is, so from what I've seen, it looks like you've been playing this on creative mode. Do you think if you played Minecraft on survival mode and tried to get through, I guess, essentially the, for lack of better words, story, it would be more appealing to you, or just in general, you're just like, I'm really feeling it?
I mean, potentially, but like my son hasn't really been interested in playing survival mode with me, and I mean, like if he wanted to play it, I would play it with him, but if it's entirely up to me, like I have so many other games, I'm just not interested.
Fair enough.
But yeah. Anything else?
No, sir.
All right, sounds good. Well, let's get into the news. So, first and foremost, I do want to mention tomorrow, that is March 27th, there will be a Nintendo Direct and this is going to be the last one that is just for the Switch, the original Switch. Nintendo has been very specific. They've said that there is not going to be anything about the Switch 2 at this Direct. And of course, next week, on April 2nd, we will have the actual Switch 2 full reveal with whatever is going to be part of that. But as far as the Switch 1 Direct goes, what are some things that you either expect to see or at least would like to see?
Oh man, what would I? All right, so I would like Nintendo to go ahead and just say, "Hey, we messed up. We still owe you Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered. Here you go. Here's a shadow drop. In fact, we're just going to go ahead and create a trilogy version bundle. So that way you have 1, 2, and 3. Okay, maybe not on the same cartridge, but you have all 3 of them, all games together. That's what I would love to see. I'm not saying it's going to happen. Maybe that's something they might save for the Switch 2 because it might be a cross-gen thing. I don't know. But, I don't know. Maybe some last-minute surprises. Like, I mean, I don't know, because it's really interesting. I don't think anything has ever happened before where Nintendo has 2 directs within a week of each other.
Right. Especially 2 major ones.
Yes, 2 major ones for 2 different consoles. I mean, they've had separate directs for a console and a handheld before. That's something. But considering the fact this is just the same console, essentially, from console gen to console gen, that's unprecedented. So I can't really be too certain what to expect because I feel like if there's anything big, they would also want to have it on the Switch 2. But at the same time, if they're going to have it on the Switch 2, it would also feel like they would wait to have it announced for the Switch 2 if it's going to be like a cross-gen type of thing. I don't think they're going to have like one announcement for a game and then say next week, hey, this game we talked about last week, it's also on the Switch 2. Now, maybe they could be discussing stuff like maybe some changes to the Nintendo Switch Online. Like, hey, we're going to bring over some more games from this platform, or we're going to introduce... Because I don't think they've done GameCube yet, have they?
No.
They could... Okay, so they could say, hey, we've got Nintendo Switch GameCube games for NSO now. Which I think could be a possibility. But overall, though, I'm bewildered. Like, it's funny because initially I saw like the rumors saying like, hey, there's this possible Switch Direct coming out tomorrow, and then you sent me the link later on saying, oh yeah, here's the Switch Direct that's coming out tomorrow. I thought, so that actually is true. But I don't know. It's really difficult to say just because I really feel like anything large enough that's major feels like it should be on the Switch 2 as well, in which case it should probably be presented next week. But granted, we don't necessarily know completely everything that's going to happen next week with the Switch 2 Direct, but it's just difficult. Now, I don't know, maybe there might be some final sort of updates, or not necessarily updates, but for games that have come out for a while, they might say, hey, here's a grand closing update. Like, again, I have no clue because it's just hard to say. But it will be interesting to see what happens tomorrow, though. I will say that.
Yeah, for sure. So here is my prediction for tomorrow. For starters, I do believe that we're going to see some actual more gameplay footage of Metroid Prime 4. Because we already know it's coming to the Switch. That footage will probably come with a release date. And I think that we're going to see Metroid Prime 2 and 3. whether it's like a real remaster like they did with Metroid Prime 1, or if it's just basically a re-release. I mean, I would hope that they would just do a full remaster, because it kind of feels cheap to like be like, we're going to do this fancy schmancy, really nice remaster for Metroid Prime 1, and then 2 and 3 will just be like, I mean, it would still be great, especially if, if it was a good price, for getting the two of them together. But as much as those games, still hold up well visually, Metroid Prime Remastered was such a well done remaster. I mean, with like upgrades all across the board, and most of us would have been perfectly happy even if it hadn't done all that, and it was just basically an up-resed version of the original game. But yeah, I think that there is a strong possibility that we will see that tomorrow, and I think that what's going to end up being a major focus with this Direct is essentially, this is going to confirm all these games are coming to Switch. So that way, instead of it being, okay, we're going to show this at the Switch 2 Direct, and then there's going to be speculation, is it going to be only Switch 2, or is it going to be both? It's like, if they show up first at the Switch Direct, then we'll be like, okay, we know these games are coming to Switch, but then they'll also be playable on Switch 2, regardless of whether or not they have Switch 2 specific versions. So, from that standpoint, I think that's what's probably going to happen. I think there is a reasonable possibility we could see games like, that we could finally get those long-rumored Twilight Princess and Wind Waker remastered ports from the Wii U, because those are some of the last ones that are left. I wouldn't mind seeing them do that with like Star Fox Zero. I'm not sure exactly how they would pull it off, because like I know how easy it is to do on something like the Steam Deck, because you can just have a back button set to switch over to the gamepad screen. It's super simple. But for the Switch, I don't know exactly how they pull that off, if they even try to. I would say that one is pretty low possibility that they would do that. But I do think that there is a decent chance that we could at least see the Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD remasters. It'd be great if it was a collection. I don't have enough confidence in Nintendo not milking it as much as possible and charging $60 per game, just because that's Nintendo for you. But it'd be great if they just did, $50-$60 for the two of them together. I would be all for that. Of course, the funny thing is that while I don't want to spend the money, I would absolutely, if they had separate cartridges for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, I would want to have the separate cartridges, because it's just the novelty of it. Having both of those games on cartridges would be extremely cool. But yeah, I don't expect that to actually happen. So we'll have to wait and see with all of that. Beyond that, I'm trying to think if there's any other things that I expect tomorrow. I guess really not, because most of the things that I'm thinking of are things that probably would not be revealed at the Switch 1 Direct, that could show up at the Switch 2 Direct. And I guess realistically we could talk about Switch 2 Direct as well, because it'll be happening the morning of our recording, the morning before we record, so yeah, next week, so we could talk about that as well. But yeah, I guess here, why don't you go ahead and start off with what you want to see at the Switch 2 Direct, or what you maybe expect to see, unless you have more for the Switch 1 Direct first.
No, I don't have anything else for that. So I kind of expect to see another Zelda title, and this one is not going to be a remake of anything they've done before, but another new entry, and possibly it will be either something in line with Wind Waker as far as within that timeline, or possibly something in the vein of, say, Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess, sort of like in that style of game. That's kind of what I feel like could happen. I do feel like we could be getting another Mario game. That's definitely, I feel like, something that's in the cards. Although, and I doubt this could happen, but partially because of the fact that Nintendo has been going back here and there for a couple of IPs and trying to revamp them. I don't know why, but I feel like they probably could do something with F-Zero. Like, try to bring that back again. Not saying they will, but it feels like it could be a possibility that it could happen. And just say, hey, we've got new F-Zero coming out. Now, one thing I would probably even say is they might, I could be wrong, but they might also try to maybe expand upon it a little more outside of just it being a racing game. Partially if they were trying to say, like, hey, you know, Captain Falcon's bounty hunter, maybe he has some side stuff he does outside of the racing portions of the game. I don't know. It's definitely something that I've heard here and there from some fans saying they've wanted to, like, explore outside of that element. But, you know, we'll see. That's just my vague prediction. But
he's going to be farming. Captain Falcon farming simulator.
Yeah. Just using his special moves, you know. Farming punch.
Show me your moves.
But I mean, yeah. Then well, I would say this, but I feel like that's gonna possibly bleed into our other topic discussion, so I won't say what I think here, right now. But I don't know. It's kind of hard to think about what they could announce. At least for a first party situation. Third party stuff, of course, like I said, we'll discuss that later on. But I guess off the top of my head, that's what I think they'll show. Although you did mention this earlier, possibly, and I guess now's a pretty good time to bring this up, is the rumored Xenoblade Chronicles X 60 FPS patch or file that was hidden in the game. I feel like that's something they could show, is the fact that, hey, we've got Xenoblade Chronicles X, it can run at 60 FPS on the Switch too. Also, you know, there might be some improved visuals, you know, maybe there'll be some reduced pop-in, you know, maybe higher quality textures, and whatnot. That's something we could possibly see in the Direct as well, and maybe just in general, just show, hey, the Switch games aren't backwards compatible, but you also get better performance across the board with many of our titles, and also have better resolutions and maybe some better textures as well. That would be cool to see as just like a general statement, but we would definitely have to see. But I still believe, though, that the regular Switch is more powerful enough than the Wii U that should be running at 60 FPS. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I just feel like there's enough of a power difference there. But yeah, those are my predictions for next week's Direct.
All right. Well, I'm gonna say, I mean, for one, we'll definitely see the new Mario Kart. I mean, they already teased it in the original reveal of the Switch 2, so we'll see something about that. My guess is it's going to be a cross-gen title, but they're showing it off at the Switch 2 Direct because it's primarily focused on the Switch 2, even though I believe it will probably end up being on both platforms. I think there is a high likelihood that we will see the next 3D Mario, and that it will come out this year. I think that is very, very likely. It's just like basically a repeat of what they did with the Switch 1, where they had Mario Odyssey revealed and fully revealed and dropped the same year.
Mhm.
So, in the first year of the Switch, and I mean, you think about it, Odyssey came out almost 8 years ago.
Wow.
Because it came out in 2017. I mean, it was the end of 2017, but still, it came out in 2017. They haven't had a full new 3D Mario since then. The closest thing they had was Bowser's Fury, that was included with 3D World, which everyone has said is amazing. I never got it because I just was always hesitant to buy 3D World because I loved it on the Wii U, but I didn't really want to buy it again. Eventually, I will though because it's great. But I also think that first party wise, we probably will get a teaser for the next new Zelda. I don't think we're going to get anything beyond a teaser. I don't think it's going to be a game that comes out this year. I think that, I mean, unless it's like one of the 2D ones or something, whether it's like maybe a remake of Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons, um, I think chances are slim that it will be a brand new Zelda that's actually like coming out this year. I think it's basically going to be, we get Wind Waker and Twilight Princess HD this year, and we get a teaser for the next 3D Zelda, which I believe is probably going to go more back to an older formula instead of doing the Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild formula. Mostly just because I feel like, I mean, I can't remember what it was that Aonuma said regarding the next Zelda game, but I thought that he had said that it wasn't going to be more of what they've been doing. I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But, and a lot of this is going to be very much a partially wish list, and partially I think that this could happen. Third-party games that I think are a real possibility to see. I think Elden Ring will be shown at the Switch 2 Direct. I think that, gosh, it was in my head. Well, Call of Duty will probably be shown in some form. I think is a pretty good chance of that. Would be really crazy, but it's still very possible. In fact, this could even be shown at the Switch 1 Direct. Would be the Master Chief Collection. I mean, it would be a perfect place to show it, regardless of which Direct they do it at. Because there's no question that the Master Chief Collection can run on the base Switch and 60 frames per second. I mean, I don't know exactly if it would do as well in multiplayer, but theoretically it should. Because, I mean, even like you look at Halo, I mean, none of those games were, I mean, all those games were 360 and earlier. I mean, yes, the Xbox One versions are upgraded-ish, or at least like Halo 2 Anniversary was an upgrade, was an Xbox One upgrade, whereas Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary was a 360 basically remaster / remake of the original Halo on the original Xbox. So, I mean, there's those things. I know that there was something else I had in my head. I think we could probably see Metal Gear Solid Snake Eater, Metal Gear Solid Delta Snake Eater could be shown there. Oh yes, Persona 3 Reload and Metaphor ReFantazio, I think could very well be both shown, especially because of the fact that all of the Persona games in the last several years have all been on the Switch. So, and the remasters. So it's basically the only Persona games that are not on the Switch are the same ones that are not that haven't come to any other modern platform. I mean, actually, I guess the dancing games, the dancing and arena games are not on the Switch, but those also are not really on anywhere other than their original platforms. So, and I don't care about those at all either. I guess there's Persona Q as well, but those ones were 3DS exclusive, so. But yeah, I think we could see all of those. I'm trying to think of some other recent games that could potentially show up and I mean probably will eventually anyway. Oh, Doom: The Dark Ages. I mean, I know that one's going to be on the Switch one way or Switch 2 one way or the other. It's just a question of, is it going to be this year, or is it going to be, shown at a later time? Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of big games shown at the Switch 2 presentation. In addition to the fact that we'll definitely, we'll obviously get to see what the Switch 2 is capable of doing, like we did with the original Switch presentation, where we found out about HD Rumble and about the Joy-Cons and the various modes beyond what we had seen in the reveal trailer and all that. That's pretty much what I have as far as predictions / wish list. Of course, I would love to see them announce the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 2, but I know that when that gets announced, it's probably going to be at a PlayStation event rather than Nintendo. So then we'll probably, get to see the next collection, which theoretically should have Metal Gear Solid 4, Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker, and Metal Gear Solid V/5. I think that's going to be the next collection, which should be an amazing collection, even though I already have 5. But I will happily take PC and Switch 2 versions of Peace Walker and 4 especially. Really, both of those.
Oh, yeah.
Because both, Peace Walker benefited so much from having the higher frame rate. When I tried out the PS3 version on the Steam Deck, I was like, holy crap, this is so much better. It's like, instead of 20 frames per second, you're getting literally 3 times that. And, because Peace Walker is a great game, but that frame rate for the PSP version, oh, that's painful. It's so painful. And it's funny how it didn't bother me that much when I was playing it at the time, and then when I got used to playing all the other ones, it's just like, wow, this is really bad. How horribly it is. How horribly it runs. But anyway. That's pretty much all I have to say about my predictions. Obviously, we'll see on both fronts tomorrow what exactly we're going to get with the Switch 1 for its last hurrah, and the Switch 2 in a week. You have anything else?
Well, I guess I will add this one third-party prediction, and that is going to be Monster Hunter Wilds. I definitely do not see this game running at all on the Switch, but maybe the Switch 2.
Maybe.
Now, albeit it'll still most likely be 30 frames per second, just because of the game suffering on every platform, essentially. So,
yeah.
The Switch 2 will probably be able to run it, but it won't be able to run it as well as we would like. But, like I said, that's a problem with virtually every platform. So, I can't really blame the Switch 2 for not being able to run it at 60 FPS when it's more of a game
I have
issue.
a feeling, though, it would probably be 30 FPS with frame generation.
Oh.
Because this game is just so poorly optimized that I have a really hard time believing that it's going to run even decently on the Switch 2 if they bring it over. I mean, they never bothered trying to bring over Monster Hunter World to the Switch 2, or to the Switch 1. And that was a PS4 game. PS4 and PC, eventually. But
Yeah. I mean, well, to be fair,
I mean, I'm
would say
not
that
saying that
one's
they
more
can't
demanding.
do it. I'm not saying that they can't do it. I just am skeptical. Like, I think, I should say, I'm not skeptical that they will do it. I'm skeptical that it will be any good. Now, I do think, because of the fact that they would be optimizing it as much as you can optimize anyway, for the Switch 2 specifically, it actually probably would run better there than on the Steam Deck. And that is one situation where I could see that being the case. But, we're going to have to wait and see on that front. I'll definitely be amazed if they manage to make it run well and not just be, with frame generation to get it running quote unquote well. Because if it's all just like it's actually running at 10 frames per second, but you have frame generation to make it look like it's running at 30, like, oh, that's painful.
Oh,
So,
oh. Yeah. Yeah, it was already bad enough
popping.
using frame gen to go from 30 to 60. I can't imagine 10 to 30.
Yeah. That's a horrific thought. All right. Well, since we're already talking about the Switch 2, there is a rumor going out, and it seems it was basically connected to the rumor that the Switch 1 was getting a presentation tomorrow, which obviously was confirmed, that the Switch 2 is going to have a 3-phase release strategy. That when it launches, it's going to be focused on first-party games. Dev kits are supposed to be going out in June. Third-party games are going to start coming out around October, November, or at least that's when it's going to be focused on. Not that we won't get any third-party games before then, but that's when it'll be primarily. And then there will be the holiday phase where, I mean, at least the article didn't really give any information on that, but it's pretty safe to say that the holiday phase is just basically focused on selling the Switch 2 to as many people as possible. But yeah, that's pretty much the information we have on that front. So what are your thoughts?
It's interesting that Nintendo would do something like this. I mean, I don't think Nintendo has ever had a launch where they focus solely on first-party titles to begin with. I mean, even the Wii U, despite the fact that, you know, third-party support dropped over time, when it launched, it had games third-party support upon launch. So
Right.
that's very interesting that they decided to say, we'll just have third-party games come out later in the year rather than at launch. Not certain what the reasoning behind that is. I mean, sure, you could say, well, it's so games won't conflict upon release. I mean, especially depending on the games that are being released. Of course, we don't know what games are being released, but it might be easier on that end. But at the same time, you know, I just don't know. I mean, you could also say that, you know, for people who might not necessarily want to buy a first-party Nintendo game, or at least the ones that are available at launch, they could say, yeah, I won't buy a Switch 2 right away, but, you know, later on in the year when a game comes out that I'm more interested in, I'll probably pick one up then. So, I mean, on that end, maybe it could help with balancing out demand for on launch, so that way it's easier for people to buy a Switch 2. I don't know. I'm not privy to that type of knowledge. But it's definitely odd, I'd say. Now, one thing which I'm curious about, though, is the fact that it says that most third-party dev kits are coming out in June, which reads to me as if though a few have actually received dev kits.
Right.
Which makes me wonder which devs have received these dev kits already. And also it makes me wonder what's support going to be like exactly, because if you're receiving a dev kit in June, is that enough time for you to have a game ready for October? Because if you don't know exactly how the Switch performs, how to optimize for it, I don't think you're able to slap out a port that soon. I mean, unless of course you're not having a larger type of game. If your game's on a smaller scale, sure, it's easier to make ports and stuff like that. But I just feel like it's a bit too soon. And of course, you know, going back, that could just be a reflection of the few devs that have received kits already. They're the ones that are going to be launching for October, whereas the ones that are receiving them in June, probably maybe early next year, potentially. But again, I really am just curious about like who these devs are that have already received their kits. Like, is it, say, Square Enix? Is it Capcom? Is it Sega and Atlas, especially if you're going to port over uh, Metaphor, if you're going to be porting over Persona 3 Reload, you would want those dev kits out at least last year at the earliest, if not maybe a little sooner. But we'll definitely see. I feel like the Switch to Direct next week will give us more information, because depending on when they say, hey, this game is being launched so and so. And also, if you're talking about ports of Doom, The Dark Ages, and Metal Gear Solid 3 Delta, you're gonna want Konami and Bethesda to have dev kits already, because they've been already working on just like making the games run already for the other platforms. If you want your game to be on the Switch too, you really need them to have your dev kit ASAP.
Right.
Unless otherwise you'll just have like a delayed release from the other versions, which could hurt to a degree. I mean, it might not hurt in the long run, but other games. I mean, Doom Eternal, that one was released later from the original, from the other games, correct? Or was that day one as well?
It was later, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, maybe it might not hurt sales, but I feel like it would be better if they release day and dates with the other versions. But I overall though, it's just interesting that, assuming of course this is all legitimate, it is interesting that they're focused on releasing their games in this type of manner. It's definitely just unusual.
Yeah, and I largely agree. Some of the things I was thinking about just as we were, going over this topic. So I think that probably there are some of the bigger publishers that already have development kits and that they've been working on getting games ready, and that, like October, November timeframe is when those games are planned to release. But then these other developers, maybe smaller ones, AA developers, that sort of thing, are getting their development kits later. So then they have some time to start working on stuff, but they're also being basically given kind of more of a way to get out, to have their games out of the way of, or rather have Nintendo's first party stuff, especially in the bigger third party games, not getting in the way of their games actually being able to do well. And that's kind of where my thought is, if this is true, which I mean, it seems pretty reasonable to believe that it could be true. I'm just, obviously I'm super curious to see what we're actually going to get next week. Like, I would love some other things apart from, obviously, like, having Elden Ring, which I firmly believe is coming to the Switch too. I think that's guaranteed. I would love it if they would port Dark Souls 2 and 3 as well, because it's like they already have Dark Souls Remastered on the original Switch. It'd be great if they could port over 2 and 3 and give Switch 2 people a 60 FPS patch for Dark Souls Remastered. That would be fantastic. I don't give them enough. I don't have enough faith that they'll actually do that, but it would be great if they did, because it'd just be like, okay, you can take these games and make them even better. Because I mean, playing all 3 of the Dark Souls games on the Steam Deck has been a fantastic experience. I mean, it is a perfect platform for that. And the Switch 2, being able to have those games would be incredible. Especially if they could improve the frame rate for the original version of Dark Souls Remastered that they have on the Switch. Plus, of course, then I could, do another comparison, but this time I would make sure that I would probably go through the first real boss instead of just through the tutorial boss, because the fact that, now I actually know how to get through all that stuff, I can very easily do it. But yeah, I think that this has the potential to be a really good idea, especially after, seeing the Wii U launch and just how, yeah, there were a bunch of big third-party games at launch, but most of them did really poorly because there was just too many big things all at once. I think that was the biggest problem they had, especially because really they didn't. Unless I'm remembering incorrectly, the only thing Nintendo first party that was available at launch was Nintendo Land, which was included with the system. And I mean, I liked Nintendo Land. I thought it was actually pretty great, especially like the Metroid one was really fantastic. You know, third person Metroid, and especially if you use the pointer controls, it was super great. But like there was a lot of really fun games with that. But it's still, I mean, it wasn't like a big thing, and there wasn't a whole lot of incentive for people to grab the Wii U at launch, except for hardcore fanboys like you and me. Although I don't know if you got it at launch. I had to wait a while before I could grab it, but you know, like I grabbed it, and one of the first things I bought was Arkham City Armored Edition because I had just been playing Arkham Asylum and was in love with it. I loved that game, and then I saw the Wii U version had some great features, especially having the map on the gamepad screen and various other just features that I thought were really cool, and I still think it was probably the game that used the gamepad best of all the third-party games. Apart from trying to control flight and the batarang with the gyro of the gamepad. That was trash, but just about everything else was great. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I have any other thoughts on this. I'm excited to see all this stuff. Even though I'm a recovering Nintendo fanboy, it's always exciting when there's something that's different, because it's like you get PlayStation and Xbox, and yeah, you get more powerful consoles and some pretty looking games, but they don't really do anything new. And the Switch 2 at least has the potential to do more new stuff, plus having another stronger competitor to, well, competitor in quotes, to things like the various handheld PCs like the Steam Deck and ROG Ally and so on and so forth, would just be kind of cool to see, because if Nintendo can put out a better product, it pushes these PC handheld manufacturers to put out better products. Because while it's not competing directly, at the same time, if Nintendo's going to provide a great value, or, you know, a better value with their product versus what you can get with the Steam Deck and so on and so forth, if they continue to improve their product, then it pushes these manufacturers to put out an even better product, even if they're not directly competed. So
one thing that popped into my head as we were discussing this stuff, what if next week they announce Death Stranding for Switch 2?
yes, that is something I didn't think of, or at least I forgot about. But yes, I think that has a real potential. I think that could happen, and it would be great if they said Death Stranding 2 is going to be, or Death Stranding is going to be there at launch, and then Death Stranding 2. Well, I don't think Death Stranding 2 will get announced for a while, but Death Stranding 1, I think you're right. I think that could be announced. I mean, will it be right away? Maybe, maybe not, but it definitely it could be eventually. I mean, I think if Death Stranding 1 comes over to Switch 2, Death Stranding 2 will as well. And I think there's a reasonable, if not a strong possibility, that we'll get both. It's just that Death Stranding 2, man, that one's going to struggle on the Switch 2, I think. Unless they really, really pare it down, which they could, theoretically, but I don't know. We'll see.
Would that be a day one purchase for you?
Yeah. Yeah, especially Death Stranding 1, because I think that if the Switch 2 hardware is, I mean, if they optimize the game well enough to make it at least be consistent, even if it's only 30 frames per second, if it's consistent, that could be good. Because the Steam Deck kind of has this issue where, like, it can do 30, it can do 40, sometimes it could even do 60, but then there's times where just, like, really bad drops, and it's just not consistent enough. And this is one area where I would say if they're optimizing it for a specific piece of hardware, which they obviously didn't for the Steam Deck, they could make it run at least at minimum at 30 frames per second. Theoretically, they could do it better if they worked on it enough. I don't expect it will be that good, but honestly, I don't know, because right now we don't know much about the Switch 2 other than rumors and speculation. So, of course, I could also see it being something where it's like, oh, frame gen. But yeah.
Yeah. And that, I guess, would also be another comparison you could do.
For sure. I mean, I'm thinking about all these different ones that would be really exciting to do, especially if it could be more games that I'm like familiar with, like Metal Gear Solid 5 and Death Stranding and all these other games that like I played a bunch, whereas so many of the games that I did comparisons were games that I hadn't played a lot of. And so it was kind of like I was learning as I was playing. And if it's a game where it's like I've put hundreds of hours into this game and I could, play it and know what I'm doing, know what, how to do things efficiently enough to get more gameplay in there, then it could be really, really fun. But either way, I'm definitely looking forward to doing some of these comparisons because it'll just be interesting. It's just a matter of having the time, which... Oh, that's what it always is. Especially as, between having an actual job and a wife and kids is just... But I will make them work one way or another. I have enough experience doing the comparisons to where at least I know what I'm doing. And hopefully most of them will not have to be 2 hours long like some of those were. So... All right. Anything else on this topic?
No, sir.
All right. Well, let's. You want to cover this Sakurai's thoughts for Japanese developers?
Sure. So recently, Masahiro Sakurai, he what's this? He was in an interview with NTAX, in which he was discussing the need for Japanese developers to focus on creating games focusing on the local Japanese audience rather than trying to cater to Western tastes. And let me see if there's an exact quote he has. Well, not exactly here, but he said that that Japanese teams in Japan have been joining a trend of making Americanized works. And however, he doesn't necessarily believe that Western gamers are looking for this. He stated, I think that they seek the uniqueness and fun of Japanese games, talking about Westerners looking for that uniqueness. And he also said that it's not really my own idea, but as an industry trend, I think Japanese people should keep pursuing the things that Japanese people like. And he talked about how gaming markets have been boosting in like regions like China, and that's another reason why he mentioned that, because they are sort of catering to that market, when it seems like Japan is slightly diverting from that. Now I have quite a few thoughts on my end about this, but what are yours regarding this?
Well, I just say amen. I mean, I wholeheartedly agree with him. There's nothing wrong well, I shouldn't say there's nothing wrong. I don't have a problem with games sometimes being a bit westernized, but I think that he's right that more games from Japan need to be focused on the Japanese players. Try to make games that appeal to Japanese audiences first, and then, because on our side, we also like to have these games that appeal to, that are different, because it's something that separates them from so much of the slop we get these days from Western developers. And there are lots of great Western games. There are lots of them that I play and that I highly recommend all the time, but I think it's great when they have things that are different. whether it's because it's the anime stuff or it's uh, just something that's more unique in how it plays. Like, I look at Kojima's games. Now, I don't want him to westernize them. I want him to keep them weird and unique in how they play, because they are some of the best games I've ever played. Plain and simple. I mean, I don't want Western developers to try to make games like Japan necessarily. I mean, they can obviously borrow some influence, like Expedition 33, which, that's an example where it's very heavily inspired by Japanese turn-based RPGs, but then it's still a Western game that has the influence, whereas when you have Japanese games that try to make their games more like Western games in terms of gameplay, it really hurts the experience. And then, of course, there's just the problems with some of the preachiness that you get with a lot of Western games nowadays. That's just really obnoxious, especially because it's usually messages that don't really resonate with the average person. Like, I don't want you, telling me about genders and all this other stuff that just is not, that just completely takes me out of the experience. Focus on telling a good story first and foremost. Making a game that plays well and or tells a good story, and leave all your other extra stuff out of there, because you preaching at me just takes me out of the game and makes me not want to touch it. I'm not someone who wants the quote-unquote fan service stuff because of how it affects me as a Christian, but I don't think that Japanese developers should stop doing that just because of how it affects me. Because most of the time, when they take that stuff out, as much as I don't want it personally, it's not something that it's something that ends up being more based on the... I'm trying to think of what's the best way to put it, because I hate it when people use the puritanical term, because when you actually look at the Puritans, what they were focused on was helping Christians to be more pure. It wasn't about telling the rest of the world that they need to be like this and everything else, other than spreading the gospel and so on and so forth. But just more like, I don't know what terminology to use, but the point is that I dislike how they're trying to force their values, how Western people are typically trying to force their values on other cultures. And while someone might be like, oh, well, what about Christianity? And it's like, well, Christianity, first of all, isn't exactly Western. It's not Eastern per se, even though it kind of comes from the East. Considered the Middle East, but I don't necessarily want that put in video games, especially because it's never done well. But I also don't want the messages that they want to put out there put in video games. I want it to just be a good story. And yeah, some of it is going to include some of their philosophy and their versions of, how the world works and so on and so forth, especially Japanese games. It's like you have very clearly heavily inspired or influenced by the way that they view the world, but I also take it for what it is. I don't know, I'm rambling a lot. The point is, all that said, I totally agree with Sakurai, and I think that Japanese games need to stay Japanese and don't worry about trying to appeal to Western audiences. Just keep doing the normal Japanese stuff and you will gain an audience that way. That's where I'm going to leave it.
Well said. I definitely agree, and it's really just something that, the thing is, these games would not have appealed to Western gamers in the first place as much if it wasn't for their Japanese uniqueness. A lot of gamers, they see these games, they think, that's something that's different from what I normally have. Let me check this out and see, what it's all about. And then they become fans of that particular game or franchise, and they want more of that. So if you try to change what got people interested in the first place, you're going to alienate your audience, essentially. I mean, to a degree, like, imagine if, with From Software, imagine if when they were making Demon Souls and Dark Souls, they said, hey, let's try to appeal to as large of a fan base as possible and, make it easier, or like have multiple difficulties and settings, and, it probably would just be a generic fantasy RPG. And it probably would have, sold decently, but no one would really be talking about it, because it would be just like, okay, we've got an action RPG from this company called From Software. Yeah, it's pretty fun. I got to play on this easier difficulty. That's cool, because, I wouldn't be caught dead playing on this hard difficulty setting. Why would they have something like that in this game? And then, like, it's forgotten, and we wouldn't have all these later iterations of the games. We wouldn't have, like, Elden Ring, probably wouldn't have Sekiro. Like, a lot of this stuff wouldn't have happened if, From Software didn't think, yeah, let's just, like, go ahead, make this hard game right here, right now. Step up to the plate, players, and do your thing, or go home. Like, that's the thing. Like, no one would have thought about doing that otherwise. Now, one rare case where I could probably see catering more so to the Western audience would be for Sonic the Hedgehog. Apparently, he's way more popular in the West than he is in Japan, actually. Mm-hmm. So, trying to cater to a Western audience on that end would probably be the only way I would say to do it. Where I would say it's acceptable. However, focus on those who like the games, because the other people outside of the Sonic franchise, those are weird people, and I do not want to try to cater to those people. But just as a whole, though, going back one topic, focusing on what was interesting about the games in the first place is what you want to do, because, for one thing, I remember a lot of people criticized this with DMC Devil May Cry. People were not a fan of Dante's look or his attitude or his portrayal of how he looked in the older games, like saying like, oh, did I really dress like that? Like, it's sort of like spitting on what people loved and enjoyed in the first place. So definitely don't do that. Don't try to cater an audience to that type of audience. Focus on what your audience really liked, because chances are what people in Japan liked, people outside the West liked as well, because otherwise they wouldn't have gotten interested in the first place. And again, like, you're a Japanese company. Why aren't you appealing to a Japanese audience? I mean, that just doesn't make sense on its own. I mean, like, imagine if you're an American company and you're focused on appealing to an audience in Tibet. Like, it doesn't make sense at all, because it's not where you're located at. It's not what your core market is. It's just unusual. Now, sure, if you focus solely on a Japanese market, you might not be able to hit as many sales outside. Like, I know for one thing, Dragon Quest, it's huge in Japan. It's more popular in Japan than Final Fantasy. Like, it's incredible. But outside of Japan, Dragon Quest is meh. I mean, at most, it's okay, considering, I think, maybe Dragon Quest 11. But other than that, though, it's not a series that has been very popular. But like I said, in Japan, everyone loves it. Like, it like I said, it's more popular than Final Fantasy in Japan. So focusing on your market is important. Because like I said, even if you don't get international acclaim, if the people at home love your games, they'll buy them, and they'll buy the next iteration, and they'll keep supporting you. And I mean, also, there are also certain traps that you definitely don't want to fall into. I mean, it's not applying to every dev and every company, but I feel like in the West, the biggest pitfall is having the prettiest graphics and having the biggest budgets. Which, if you have those two things combined, it's going to make it's going to need you to sell more copies of a game just so you can break even and try to make a profit from that point. And then, as you were saying, you definitely don't want to fall into the Western sensibility of preaching to your audience, because people buy a game, they want to have a good time. They don't want to go through a huge slog of, hey, did you know that what you're doing is bad? Oh, you like to play this type of way? You should feel bad. I'm gonna judge you and give you a nice, good. Well, what time is it? We've got time for a 30-minute sermon right now. Okay, well, why what you do is bad. I mean, sure, you could say that certain ideas or in certain games, like how Avalanche was fighting against Shinra and whatnot, and from an environmental perspective, but it's not like they were trying to preach at you or anything like that. I mean, of course, seeing Barrett on the subway train was funny. Talking to people, that was funny, but that's not what the message of the game was. It was just like a situational thing, but it was like the core meaning of the story itself. So don't fall into that pitfall as well, is essentially what I'm saying, because you'll definitely alienate more players, which is something you don't want to do, which goes to like the core idea of when you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one, essentially. So definitely don't do that. I agree with Sakurai. He's definitely on the nose here, and more Japanese devs do definitely need to follow this idea. I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with trying to make Western gamers happy, but at the same time, they shouldn't be your core focus. Focus on your gamers at home, and if Western gamers also like what you're doing, they'll go ahead and buy it. Simple as that. That's all I've got.
Good stuff. All right. Well, that's all the major topics we have for tonight. Did you have anything else you wanted to discuss?
Yeah, just one sort of question I have for you. So for the viewers watching, in case you didn't know, earlier this week was Bloodborne's 10-year anniversary. And of course, as is to be expected, there is no Bloodborne remaster, remake, or even a basic port. And that being said, my question for you is, which do you think is likely to happen first? Bloodborne remastered, or Nintendo porting games to PC? And also, considering the fact that Sony didn't even acknowledge Bloodborne, they didn't even make a post about it. So because of that, which do you think is more likely to happen first?
That's a tough one. Maybe it's still a bit of Bloodborneum, but I think that's more likely. I still think that's more likely. I mean, I do believe Nintendo will eventually do it, but I still think that there is a chance that we see something Bloodborne related this year. I mean, yeah, of course, obviously it would have been perfect if they had done it on the anniversary, but this is also, Sony we're talking about, and there's been plenty of examples where they missed the boat. I mean, really, it's true. Every video game company, Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft, they've all, missed the boat on things like that. But the other thing is that Sony also knows that if they do Bloodborne remastered, it doesn't matter when they do it, it's going to sell. I mean, it's just going to sell amazingly well. And since it would undoubtedly be day one on the PC, assuming it actually happens at some point. I mean, they know that the second it drops on PC, it's going to probably outsell the PlayStation version for both PS4 and the remaster on PS5 combined. I think it will easily outsell. Because Bloodborne, I mean, FromSoft games, especially Souls-likes in general, but especially FromSoft games, sell incredibly well on PC. And I know if it comes to PC, even if the initial port is bad, it will probably be a day one purchase for me, because since I've gotten into the Souls-like games, I've been like, yes, I will definitely play Bloodborne. Well, God willing, assuming I'm alive long enough to play it. But, yeah. Of course, if it doesn't happen, I'm just going to get the PS4 version and emulate it and enjoy it that way. Enjoy it, better frame rates, better visuals, everything else. But yeah, that is what I think. It's like, I want Nintendo to port their games, because once Nintendo opens those floodgates, I'll be done buying Nintendo platforms, at least for me.
Okay, so I actually feel like I'm on the opposite spectrum. I feel like I've been burnt so many times by copium that
Yeah.
I feel like it's Nintendo would actually do it first. And I also feel like there is some logical reasoning for that as well. While Nintendo is adamant about not porting games over, Nintendo also has a history of being behind the times with things. I mean, considering the fact that their servers are still using only peer-to-peer instead of having dedicated servers, considering the fact that, I mean, this isn't something that I necessarily wanted to happen, but it was only up until the Switch that they started to that they had free online. The Switch was when they first started to charge for playing online for games. So, considering the fact that Sony and Microsoft had already been doing that, they're just behind with trends and stuff. So I really feel like this could be another trend where putting games on PC, I would say 10 years from now, they'll probably say, you know what, maybe we should try putting games on the personal computer and see what happens there. And I feel like, though, they would probably only say, well, we'll just do a test run of games. So we'll put games from the NES, Super Nintendo, N64, and maybe the GameCube, and we'll see what happens from there. And depending on how they sell, we'll put more games on the platform. And then after that, they'll say, why didn't we do this sooner? And then, that's how it's gonna go. But Nintendo has been marching to the beat of its own drum. But I feel like still, eventually they'll see trends and they'll say, we should probably get on that. And because of that, I feel like it's more likely that we would see games ported to PC first before Sony releases an official version of Bloodborne.
Alright. Fair enough. Yeah. I don't see a flaw in your logic. Just we'll have to wait and see.
No, I don't. I would love to be wrong, though. Don't get me. Don't. I would love to be wrong.
Same. I would love it if both of us were wrong, or rather, if we were both wrong in that both Bloodborne and Nintendo games come to PC at the same time. Or just, in general, like, yeah, it would have to be at the same time, because we would both be wrong and right at the same time, so. But, yeah. We'll see. We'll just wait. And for now, it is what it is. Alright. Let's go into our recommendations and dissuasions, so why don't you start us off?
Alright, so my recommendation is going to be make your own ice cream. It's definitely something, well, depending on your recipe, it could be easier, it could be harder, depending on what you do, and especially depending if you have an ice cream machine that could definitely help you. It's definitely possible to do it without one. I make ice cream without an ice cream machine. It just definitely takes longer. But if you do it that way, you can add in whatever ingredients you want. You can make it custom to however you desire, if there's something like, say, in an ice cream you buy at the store, and you're like, hey, I like these flavors, but certain flavors I wish there was more of this and less of that, or if I just don't like this ingredient in there, you can do that yourself with your own ice cream. So I definitely recommend giving it a try at least once. If you don't like it, that's fine. But depending what the recipe you do have, you could get a good gallon out of it easily, and have some that will last you for a while.
Nice. Yeah, I think we've tried doing it before and it wasn't successful, but I haven't actually tried it myself, and I would probably, if I was going to do something like that, want to get like an ice cream maker or something. The main reason I haven't tried doing it is because although I'm sure it would be amazing, I also don't need to eat more ice cream because I already have enough of a problem with food. I eat too much, so. Yeah. All right, good stuff. Well, along a similar vein, although it wasn't originally on my list, I do want to recommend, if you've never had macadamia nut pancakes before, so good. They're very easy to make too. I mean, macadamia nuts are a little pricey, but it's not difficult to make them. I made some yesterday. Did some home milled flour. My wife did some home milled flour, and we did with that, and I did some homemade pancakes, and then I made some homemade coconut syrup because that's typically how they're served, and it was fantastic. So good. So yeah, try macadamia nut pancakes if you can. If you ever go to Hawaii, that's a great place to get them. You can easily get them there, and they are so good. But my main recommendations, first of all, for games like Dark Souls 2 and Dark Souls 3, which do not have cloud saves on Steam, back up your saves. Find out where the save is, back them up, whether you have a Google Drive or Dropbox or whatever Apple equivalent there is, any number of different things where you can back it up, just back it up somewhere. That way, especially if you're playing on Steam Deck, you have a way to get your save back rather than having to worry about losing a bunch of progress like I did in a completely unexpected situation. So there's that. The other thing is, if you are attempting to, if you have issues with using a capture card to get Steam Deck to go through in like OBS and that sort of thing, like you're just getting a flashing green screen instead of actually getting the picture like you're supposed to, make sure that your Steam Deck output is set instead of to automatic, especially when you're dealing with 1440p and 4K monitors. Set it to 1080p, and then you will get that output that you're looking for, and it will look the way it's supposed to. So the weird thing about that one, so when I tested it after the fact, before I figured this thing out, when it was just outputting directly to my 1440p monitor, I had no issues. But when it went through to OBS, it was like just basically a green screen, and it was not working properly. And the troubleshooting things I found were them saying that like, oh, well, it's because your PCIe slot doesn't support enough, or doesn't have the right amount of power and everything. Is like, well, this slot is exactly the same as the one I have for my GPU, so there's no reason why I should be having these problems. And there may be some other solutions that I can figure out eventually, but for now I'm just not going to worry about it. At least I know that 1080p works, and the next time I do a stream where I want to do both, or if I just want to do my Steam Deck in general, especially if I'm playing like Dark Souls or something, because I prefer playing it on the Steam Deck, at least I know how to get it functional. So there's that. But yeah, that's what I have for recommendations. So, dissuasions.
My dissuasion is going to be, don't take the time you have with your loved ones for granted. I feel like that's something that is quite easy to do, especially in our modern age of rustle and bustle. But like, if the time you have with your family and your close ones, definitely enjoy them, because time flies quickly. I think it's crazy how my niece and nephew are already 5, and I feel like, it was just yesterday. I was holding them when they were newborns, essentially. So time definitely flies, and some people won't be in your life anymore. So definitely just enjoy the time you have with them.
150,000,000% agree. Well, my dissuasion is do not play Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition on a high-resolution screen unless they add DLSS in the Switch 2 version. Play it in handheld mode only. That is the best way to do it right now because you will get a much better experience. Yes, it's only 30 frames per second, but honestly, it's way more tolerable on the Switch screen, especially on the OLED screen, than it is on a big screen because it's just, you see a lot more flaws that way. Now, it might not be as bad if the big screen is like low resolution. Like my living room TV is 720p because it was my mom's TV, and it's like, okay, if I played on there, it probably actually would look just fine. But on my 1440p monitor, which is literally double the resolution, it does not look so good. It's definitely a lot more noticeable, the flaws in the visuals. And when I was playing it on the Switch itself, it's just like, this is so much more pleasant of an experience. So, plus, it's the first truly portable version of Xenoblade Chronicles X, instead of doing what I did, where I would plug in my Wii U in the car or in the airport and then play on the gamepad screen. So yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, that's what I have.
Very, very good. Very good.
All right, where can people find you?
They can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAMXERACON. So youtube.com/@IamXeracon. No new content this past week, but I'm hoping that with the new splitter I bought, I should be able to put out my video, get everything recorded that way, and then that should be coming out. And I do actually have a sort of follow-up video just based on my thoughts on everything with that, which we'll be talking about the 6th generation of consoles as a whole, and my love for that. So yeah.
Well, you can find me on my YouTube gaming channel at TheFrozenGamer87. Also up on Rumble, although I haven't posted any content at all on Rumble apart from doing the test stream last week. But that will be the home for future comparisons when I get around to doing those, as well as hopefully some topical videos in the not too distant future. Really, it's just life has been really busy lately, and it hasn't slowed down enough to really be able to take the time to work on stuff like that. And honestly, it's just not a high priority. It's like, I would like to do stuff with this. It's just a matter of finding the time to work on everything. And at the end of a long day, most of the time, I just want to hang out with my wife and, not work on stuff. So we'll get there eventually. There will be more content in the future. Hopefully I can get those last 2 comparisons all put together before the Switch 2 launches, so then I can focus on the Switch 2 comparisons and not think about any more of the Switch OLED comparisons. So then there is my YouTube cooking channel, which is also on Rumble. That is not Authentic But Delicious. YouTube, it's at NABD Cooking. Rumble, it doesn't have a custom URL. Nothing new yet. It's just been a while since I've gotten anything put together. Once again, life is really busy right now. But there will be more cooking videos. Hopefully I'll be filming some more pretty soon as well. There's just a lot going on. So there's that. But then there is the YouTube channel for the podcast, as well as the Rumble channel, where, of course, we have the video version of the podcast every week, normally at 7 a.m. Central Time every Friday. This week might be... I'm not positive when it's going to come out. I am switching from using Adobe Premiere to DaVinci Resolve, and I've only basically just barely messed with it. So tomorrow is basically going to be when I start trying to learn how to use it a bit more for editing the podcast. The little bit that I've used, it seems to run a lot better than Premiere, which is great. And exporting seems to be faster and everything. But even with that being the case, there's still just, it's learning how to do the things that I already know how to do in Premiere. The main reason why I'm making the switch is because for a while, so my brother-in-law has the full Adobe suite that he uses on a consistent basis, but it's supposed to be able to be usable on a laptop and a desktop. So I've been using his license because he only has one computer that he was using it on, and I use it for getting like church's sermon put up, and then also do it for personal stuff as well, for all the videos for podcasts and my YouTube channels and all that. But lately, Adobe seems to have figured out that we're using computers at two completely different locations, sometimes at the same time, and they're cracking down, and it seems like they're not going to allow that to continue to happen. So I may try tomorrow when I'm doing the editing to see if I can get away with utilizing Premiere for one more time, just so that way I'm not having to learn something completely new right when I'm editing, and then over the weekend learn how to do Resolve, because I really want to just use this other software, especially because it's way cheaper than getting a license for Premiere. Because Premiere, it's like, if I'm just using Premiere and Audition, which are the two things that I use, then it's like $50 a month. Whereas Resolve, there's a free version which does basically all the same stuff, except that some of it is simpler if you get the paid version. But the paid version is $300, but it's a permanent license. There's no subscription involved, and it's also actually what they've used to edit like the last several Marvel movies. So it's like, I mean, what I've used of it, I like the layout and everything. It's just different. It's different enough to where I'm having to relearn basically. But there's a good chance. I definitely want to make the switch. I'm just not sure if I can do it tomorrow first thing or not. I'm gonna look at tutorials and check some stuff, because really the basic things, I just need to make sure I know how to be able to change the volume level of a track across the entire track, so that when I'm doing the music, for example, I want to have it at a certain low level so that it's quiet enough to where you can hear it but not so loud that I'm getting copyright claims, and just a couple other minor things, because most of the editing is not overly complicated. It's just because it's a different piece of software, it might take me a little bit longer. So we'll see how things go tomorrow, and hopefully I can just, whether I use Resolve or use Premiere for one more week, I can learn how to use Resolve well enough to where that can just be the software I use going forward. So that may impact when the podcast comes out, but it still should be up on Friday morning. There's also the Orange Box Pod Clips channel, which is, of course, segments from the episodes that we've been discussing. One issue that comes with that, of course, is the fact that, and this might be another reason that I need to actually use Premiere, the last week's episode, I haven't put up the clips yet. I don't think I rendered them either, in which case I still need to do that. Because it's either that, or I basically have to just re-download, or I guess find the original video. I might actually be able to do that. I might be able to just find the original video and cut it up. Or, find the original file on my computer, because it's probably still there. If I could cut that up, that would work as well. But it would be easier if I could just bring it up on Premiere, where I already have them separated into different things, and then I can just render them, upload them, and go from there. Regardless, Orange Box Pod Clips is just the different segments from our discussions on the podcast every week, and that's basically just for people who want the discussions but don't want to listen to a 2.5 hour podcast. So But that's on YouTube and Rumble, and I think actually Rumble probably has more right now of the recent clips than YouTube. So, that being said, lastly, of course, the podcast, the audio-only version, goes up on every major podcast platform, 12 a.m. Central Time, every Friday morning, and that has all the same content, just without our beautiful faces and without the gameplay clips. But you still get all of the discussions, all the music, all the background music, and all that good stuff. Yeah, I guess you can, if you want to contact us, you can send us an email to the orangeboxpodcast@gmail.com. You can also send us a message, a tweet, whatever you want to call it, on X, Twix, whatever you want to call it, at the Orangebox Pod. And even though we are not active on there in any way, shape, or form, if you tag us or anything else, then we'll be sure to get back to you. On a similar vein, you can obviously, if you have questions for us or topics you want us to discuss, you can reach out to us through either of those methods, or just by leaving a comment on the video version of the podcast. So that should be everything. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I am the Frozen Gamer 87. That is I am Zerocon. We are the Orange Box Podcast. And until next time, save the last email for Strong Bad. Orange Box Podcast. Out.